So I'm John Bliss, the serving moderator. I'm going to call our meeting to order. I'm going to ask those present, if they are able, and those watching at home to stand while we say our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of these United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. So as I just mentioned, these are pretty unprecedented times, and I don't think we ever thought, even a few years ago, that we'd be sitting here having a hybrid in-person and electronic town meeting. Just a couple of quick notes before we jump right in. This is, of course, a different kind of town meeting, as you've seen in the warning. We will not be voting today, so this is an informational session. We have two members of the select board here, Chris Plum and Chris Walker. We, of course, have our town clerk, Jeanette Haight. So this is a meeting to get clarity and to open up discussion for potential questions on the business of the town. So again, we won't be voting today. This is a pretty complicated technical thing. Also, we do have also other members of our select board tuning in via Zoom. So I'm sorry I forgot you, but there they are. You can all wave to the cameras. So thank you, and we have some members of the public who are also voters and citizens of the town who are also tuning in. So thank you all for making the effort and trying to be here today. So I will, as usual, ask us to be as organized as we can be, and to remember again that this is an informational session. We can't change any items. We can't really affect anything on the warning today. What we have to do is ask questions, get clarity, and all votes, of course, all decisions will be made by Australian Ballot on Tuesday. So again, to those, particularly those tuning in online, let's go through the process by which you can ask a question. I think for those here, they know to raise their hand to identify themselves. I know them, but to identify themselves, we're wearing masks, so that will be helpful. But for those tuning in online, let's go through the protocol for questions. So I believe that what will happen is if you have a question during the discussion of an article, you'll need to raise your hand, actually physically raise your hand to your screen. Jeanette will take note of that and will cue me. And then we'll call on you and she'll unmute you so you can ask a question, and that will be heard in the room by our select board members here and by the select board members who are tuning in online. Jeanette, is that roughly what will happen?
That's one way. The other way is at the bottom of the Zoom screen, there's a tab called Reactions. And if people click on that, there's a place that says Raise Hand, and they click on that, and I'll see a yellow hand in their screen.
Okay.
Also, if they're joining by phone, you're going to need to repeat this in the mic, but if they're joining by phone, it's *9 to raise their hand.
Okay, so a couple of other ways folks can join the conversation from home. If they're calling in by phone, they would hit *9, and that would dial into our system here. And what Jeanette said was that there's a feature on the bottom of your dashboard, which is the reactions portion button, and so that will come up and Jeanette will be able to see that. So this is a lot to take in, a lot of technical stuff, but we've tried to create enough ways for you to be in touch and ask your questions and be involved. And again, thank you so much for caring about your town and taking a little extra, or possibly a lot extra effort today to be here. So the first order of business on your warning, the agenda for today's informational meeting is a discussion, to hear the auditor's report. And I believe we have our auditor tuning in online. And Jeanette, if you could remind me the page that report is in the town.
It's on page 22 of the town report.
On page 22, if you have your town report at home, and if our auditor could raise his hand.
As soon as I find him, I'll unmute him.
Okay. Jeanette is unmuting our auditor. While she's doing that, do any of the present company have questions for the auditor? Robert, Hank? Yeah, Hank.
Is that mic on? I have a hard time hearing.
Technical question, Eric and Sarah, is this mic goes into the system, it doesn't,
That mic is just so that the people on Zoom can hear.
Got it.
It does not amplify in this room.
okay.
So to be heard in this room, you have to speak up.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do, if it's okay with the people standing next to me, or sitting, is I'm gonna remove my mask here, so that I can speak. Can you hear me better now?
I hear you better, yeah.
Okay, and I will try to speak up. So, questions from folks in the room?
Questions about what?
This is the auditor's report. On page 22, it's the first item on the agenda. Questions for the auditor? Jeanette, anybody tuning in online?
Jean Peters has a question.
Okay, we call on Jean Peters, and you're being unmuted, Jean.
Jean, we can't hear you. Oh, there you go. Now you can.
I just want to point out that anything that anybody says besides John is very garbled. So when there are questions in the room, John, could you repeat them into the microphone?
Okay, I think you said anybody other than me is not, it's not audible.
Yes.
Okay, so I did, Eric informed me of this, and I did forget to mention that we do have a mic here in the room. So anybody who would like to speak here, and possibly
So
we
if
should.
you're sitting on the bench and you want to say something, that was totally an in-the-room conversation that couldn't be heard.
Got
If
it.
I want them to be able to hear me out there, I have to stand here.
Okay, okay.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Gene. That's important. We need to get these technical aspects down. We're all just figuring it out. Anybody present or anybody online have questions for the auditor? All right. We will move on, but you know, we're making this up as we go. So if a question occurs later, raise your hand virtually. We'll circle back. All right. So now a discussion on the election of town officers, and that can be found. Jeanette, help me out here on page.
Lori's on page 10.
Page 10, you will find in your town report those positions which are open and those which are shifting. So is there any question or comment from those in the room or those tuning in on our slate of officers for this year who will be voted on this coming Tuesday? Jeanette, are you getting anybody online?
See anybody?
Okay.
You have most of the candidates are there. Jean Peters.
Oh, Jean, yeah, go ahead.
Wait,
Oh,
there's a delay.
Is there a vacant position? Will there only be 4 select people?
good question. Do either of you select board members want to address that?
I believe we have a couple people running for candidates running for office.
So Chris says that it's believed that there are a couple of candidates running. Does anybody know the names of those folks?
Maddie Bowden is asking to speak.
Yes, Maddie.
Hi, yeah. So I'm one of the people who's running for office, which is one reason why I thought it was appropriate for me to raise my hand right now. I'm running for re-election. I agreed to run for a select board 3 years ago because I think the town is really well run, and I didn't think it would be a lot of work. And that has mostly been true, not entirely. But I ran for re-election. I'm running for re-election because in the 3 years that I've been on the select board, we've lost a lot of institutional knowledge. We had Red Johnson, who moved. We had Bart Gordon, who moved. Barry Williams, who sort of retired from select board. So my goal is to keep some continuity. I mean, we have Chris Plum, thank goodness. But I think it's important to have some continuity on the select board, and that is why I'm running for re-election. And I also wanted to point out that we do have people running for the open slot, and I believe that one of them is on the meeting right now. And tell him that this would be his opportunity to talk to the people about his candidacy.
Thanks, Maddie. Appreciate it. Thanks for what you do, and thanks for tuning in. Anybody else want to speak? Is that candidate here?
Yes, Scott Kendall is here. I'm trying to unmute him.
Okay. Scott, if you wish to speak, we're working on getting you up.
I'm clicking on it. Oh, there he goes.
Hi, Scott. We think that you're live.
No, it's not working. You asked him to click on his microphone and try to unmute.
Scott, can you click on your microphone and try to unmute yourself? We're having technical difficulties.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. I'm Scott Kendall. I'm running for selectman just to be part of the town of Andover. I was originally part of this town when I was a kid. My mother was actually the town clerk in the late 80s, early 90s. John Bliss actually taught me how to play guitar when I was a little kid. I don't know if he remembers that.
Oh, geez, that's a bad thing.
So I'm just here to keep Andover Andover. That's all I want to do is keep it a small, quaint town, and be part of the politics and be part of the decisions that go on here. If anybody's got any questions for me, by all means, call me, message me, whatever. I'm all vocal. I'll talk to you all day if you want.
Well, thank you, Scott. It doesn't look like my guitar teaching slowed you down at all, so that's good. Thanks for stepping up. If anybody has questions for Scott and needs to get in touch with him, I think they can probably do that through Jeanette if they don't have your info. But thanks, Scott. Thanks for tuning in.
Yes.
Anybody else? Any questions from the room or from beyond for our two declared candidates who have just spoken, Maddie and Scott? All right, I'm going to move on, but if it takes a while for you to come up with your questions or to message, get through to Jeanette, we can, as I say, we can circle back. We can try that if it doesn't get too confusing. So issue number 3 on the warning is a discussion on when to hold town meeting next year. So this is usually a fairly lively debate and conversation. So we open it up again. This is not a binding, can't be a binding discussion here, but we have the select board well represented, and so if you have ideas and feelings about that, go ahead and register them online. Speak up in the room.
John,
Yes.
so would you let people know what
Okay.
2022. That's what they will be voting on specifically.
Okay, so Jeanette informs me that on the ballot that you'll be marking on Tuesday, it's a yes or no question as to whether to hold town meeting on the Saturday prior to the first Tuesday of the month of March next year. So that is going to be a yes or no question on your ballot. Again, we always have a lively discussion. There's lots of opinions about this. So I guess there is a way to choose another option. It's a little circuitous at this point. That suggestion would have to get voted down. And then I suppose that the select board would have to be petitioned. They probably won't like it very much if that happens, but that's life. And another option will be determined. So thank you, Jonathan. Yeah. So thank you, Jonathan. So the question is, shall the voters authorize holding Andover's annual town meeting on Saturday, February 26th, 2022, which is the Saturday prior to traditional town meeting day. So that's what will be on the ballot on Tuesday. Anybody tuning in, Jeanette?
I don't have anything.
Okay. In the room, any questions, commentary? Robert, you're being very quiet this morning. Okay. All right. Issue number 4 is a discussion of this 2021-22 budget for the town of Andover. And I believe we're going to do this a little bit differently this year. I think, Chris, you're going to guide us through the process, but Jeanette is going to, or has already thrown up some slides. Is that the case, Jeanette?
I'm going to pull up the page 21 of the town
Okay.
report, so anybody should turn to that if they have.
So if you're interested in the town budget, which is what we're discussing now, turn to page 21 in your town report.
And I'll do my best to guide us through this.
Okay. And Chris, put that. Do you want to start, Chris, or do you want to entertain? I guess you want to start and then entertain.
You're going to explain it, and then
Yep.
if people have questions.
Okay.
Okay, as usual, we're talking about 3 different years here. We're talking about last year, which was finished up in June, because we work on a fiscal year from July 1st to June 30th. So the results from last year ended last June. We're talking about this year, which started in June and won't end until July, so we don't have any solid figures of where we came out on that yet. And we're talking about next year's budget, which is from July 1st this year to June 30th, 22. So last year's results, which was in just last June, we had an income of $934,832.73, and it can be found on page 17 of the town report. The expenses came out to $910,517.35, which is the end of the budget page on page 20, which left us a surplus of $24,315.38. The select board recommends that half of the surplus, $12,157.69, be deposited into the highway bridge fund, and the other half deposited into the capital equipment fund. And this will be an article on the Australian Ballot on March 2nd. And you can look at page 23 to find the balances of those other accounts.
Chris, I have a quick question. How does that half deposit compare to surplus distributions of other years?
I mean, it's been our tradition to split it and put it in those 2 categories.
Okay.
The other option is if you vote no to that, we'd have to decide what to do with it, but it has to go before the townspeople in a vote as to what we do with that. We can't just spend it. So, but you can see on page 23, the capital equipment fund balance was $29,000 at the end of last year. It's currently at 113, and that's because of the $65,000 that was put in for this year's budget and $19,000 of surplus from last year.
I would point out to the voters and taxpayers as well that there was a new purchase made this year, the purchase of the mowing tractor. And was that, Chris, was 45 grand the total cost of that?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
45,000. It was a used piece.
So my own perception is that was a hugely positive purchase for the town for a lot of reasons. But I just want to point that out, that is a purchase of a type we haven't made before. So if people have questions about that.
And then the bridge fund, highway bridge fund is currently at $465,000. And that's a little harder to explain the credits and balances on that one, but it's gone down because of paving 2 years in a row. And we will be having more expense on the big culvert on North Hill, as well as the High Bridge is not going to be replaced probably till 2023.
Chris, for clarification, that big culvert on North Hill, that's the bottom of the ravine at Barry Williams'
Yes.
house? Okay.
Correct.
Or, yeah.
And so that, we're going to be paving Hilltop this year. So that, where do we leave off? So the board recommends splitting the surplus to those two accounts.
Okay.
Next year's proposed budget, an income of $884,374.45, and expenses are the same. Of that income, $745,000 is from municipal taxes. This year's amount is $752,801, meaning a decrease of, okay, that's this year, which is the year we're in, the 752. Next year will be 745,000, which is actually a decrease of almost $7,000 due to expected increases in other income areas, the stuff we get from the state and so forth. The expense budget is $887,801.75, meaning an overall decrease of $3,427.30. And re-reviewing the highway projects this year, we'll be doing a major culvert replacement on North Hill by Barry Williams' shop. And we'll have a state structures grant of $175,000. And we may have to spend up to another $175,000 to get that done. We also anticipate paving Hilltop at a cost of about $240,000, with no money available from the state for that project.
Chris, last year we purchased the mowing tractor.
Yes.
Are there any other pieces of equipment that we'd be looking to purchase or replace this year?
I don't know if it'll be this year, but this year or next year we'll have to replace the ton truck, which is about a $90,000 purchase.
Yeah. So is everyone picking all this up? If you're having trouble hearing or understanding, let us know, message Jeanette. Are there questions for Chris on the budget from anyone present or tuning in? Any questions on the budget, Hank?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah, would you go to the mic so that they can hear you at home? You may also want to remove your mask if you're okay doing that, or you could just shout real loud.
All right. I don't have any trouble talking.
Okay, all right.
On page 20,
Yep.
which is the end of the town budget, it says town budget transfers. And if anybody notices how much money is put into the bridge fund and the capital equipment fund, I have no problem with that. But then you go down to transfer to the cemetery fund. It's just $3,000. If you go halfway up the page towards the top and you'll come to reading and mileage for the highway department, that's $3,000. So to think they get as much money to go to meetings as you're spending on the whole cemetery. And I've put now is the time I think I'm going to request the selectmen to boost up the transfer of money from the budget into the cemetery fund by a little bit, because that doesn't even cover the cost of mowing the cemeteries, and the town has to pay it anyway. So I'd say, does it make much of a difference what pile of money you take it out of? But if it was already put in the cemetery fund, then if it's money spent on the cemetery. It doesn't come out of the town budget. It should already be put in there. So I'm putting in as a cemetery commissioner and a sexton, I'm putting in a request to the selectmen to see what they can do about boosting up what they put in the cemetery.
Do you have a figure that you've proposed to them?
That is a budget item that's listed, and I think it's very improportional to the money they put. And of course, the capital equipment fund is very important, and the bridge fund is very important. But it's chump change what you put in this cemetery fund.
So did you propose a number to them, and they've heard that?
Yeah, I'd like to ask the selectmen, because it's their decision apparently, to put a little bit more money in the cemetery fund. It's going to come out of the town budget anyway.
Yeah.
So somebody looks at that and says, geez, they only put $3,000 of town money in the cemetery, even though they don't realize that.
Yeah.
The mowing and everything else that the taxpayers have to pay.
You know, a lot of people may not be aware of how many cemeteries are maintained by the town, and you're the cemetery commissioner.
Yeah,
What's the number and rough area that is maintained by?
Area-wise?
Roughly.
That really doesn't has any bearing on it, because it's not the acreage, it's the rock piles.
Yeah.
If anybody's been in any of the cemeteries, they're very bony. It's mountainous country, and if you go into the Middletown Cemetery, that's a rock pile.
There are four cemeteries at the town.
Well, actually 3 active.
Okay.
There's one behind on O's Road that still belongs to the town, but they voted years ago not to ever use it again.
Yeah.
It's very, very small.
Yeah.
It's actually almost in a fellow's yard up there. So that's my budget
Thank you.
request.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Hank.
If I can speak to that.
Yeah. Chris.
What we'd like to do, Hank, is to have you propose a number for us and give us a breakdown of what the expenses will be, if you can.
I can't hear you, Chris.
If you could give us a breakdown of what your expenses are for the year?
Well, it's on, yeah, it's let me see, I got a paper clip on, Chris, just turn to page 28, no. Where did it go?
Hank,
Page 20.
what I think Chris is asking is, going forward, out of this, not in this meeting, you propose a number and a breakdown to the board.
I'd like to add something.
Yeah, who's that online?
Jed Laprise.
Yeah, Jed.
The reason we came up with that number was based on what the actual costs were, because the mowing and all was put back out to bid, and we got much more competitive bids last year. And so we based that number on the actual costs of last year. So it was based on last year's numbers. The mowing expense has gone down considerably with the new contract that we have. And actually, we felt the service that we received was even better. So that is how the number was come to.
Okay, well, thanks for that clarification, Jed. I guess I would still suggest to Hank that you put a proposal together, talk to the select board. Yeah.
Because we have, last year we put a contract
You
out.
need to stand up to the
Yeah,
mic.
stand at the mic. Yeah.
Last year we put a bid out for some tree work in the Middletown Cemetery. And it was awarded to the same Ted Knox that did the other two cemeteries, who did an excellent job. But he was so busy last year, he didn't get to it. And I talked to him about it at the end of deer season, and he said he hasn't forgot us, but he's been so busy in doing tree work that threatened structures and stuff that he just hadn't had. But he didn't forget us. He will be. He will come up and do it, and that price has already been contracted and everything else. So we're going to be looking at that next year. And eventually, we're going to have to put a fence around the 1/4 acre that Jill, the Ponds, donated to the town for the cemetery. The town crew came up and we poked a hole in the wall so we could go through the back wall into that property, and they did an excellent job. And I thank them very much for doing that. It was a good job, but there's a lot of brush here that's got to be cut. But that's down the road. But that's all things that are going to have to be done.
Yeah.
And I didn't bother putting any bids out because we still got cemetery room that we don't have to move into the new piece for a while yet. But we're going to have to put a fence around it, probably a 4-foot chain link fence just to keep the cows out of it. And it's a 1/4 acre, so it'll be 100 feet one way, 100 feet the other way, because there's stone walls on the other two sides.
Well, it sounds like the proposal from Chris is come with a number, a breakdown. Jed, thank you for your input. Thank you.
Excuse me, I have a question, John, for Hank. It's Jill.
Yeah, hi, Jill.
Why do we have to have a chain link fence? It's really not in keeping with the area. And I know he was worried about the animals getting in, but they are already enclosed by an electric fence. And I find the chain link fence very unsightly. Is it a state requirement or what?
There's a law that cemeteries are supposed to be fenced in.
I understand. Does it have to be chain link?
Well, no, it doesn't. But that's probably what I consider the safest and the most economical way to do it. And so it doesn't only have to be 4 foot high, and we'll have to put probably a 10-foot gate on the fence that faces your property to get a big piece of equipment in there, because the little road that goes through the existing cemetery and the hole in the wall will not accommodate. I think you'd have a hard time getting a backhoe in there. If somebody wants a casket burial, you have to get the equipment in there. So, you could, it depends on, I'll get prices for different kinds, but I don't think a electric fence will cover the law as far as fencing in the cemetery.
No, that would be in addition to another type of fence which you could erect.
I
Well,
think,
yeah, but,
I think
the,
Jed,
you could put probably a wood fence, but that eventually that won't last as long as the chain link fence.
I want to call on Jed.
In most cemeteries, that's what they do, is just a 4-foot chain link fence. It's all galvanized and it'll be there for a couple hundred years.
Hank, I want to call on Jed.
I just want to say I agree with Jill. I think we can do something that's more aesthetically pleasing and fitting in with the environment up there. And I will say, I personally will donate my equipment for doing the fencing. I have a skid steer and I have an auger for post drilling. And I would be more than happy to donate my time and equipment to get that done so that we could have something other than chain link.
Well, that's fine, then I can go get estimates, I'll get some different styles of fence, and then whatever the town wants to put in there, you know, I'm just trying to look at the most economical and most efficient fence to put there, but if you want something a little fancier, well, we can do that, you know, it just depends on how much money you want to spend. It's going to cost you more than the $3,000 you give me now for operated on, you know, for a year. So we can do that. I have no problem. And of course, across the front, there's supposed to be a fence there, but anybody goes by there in the wintertime and you can't set it back far enough away from the stones that are closest to the road where it won't get destroyed by the snowplow. So it's a catch-22 situation as far as the front of the cemetery is concerned. And the existing cemetery's got stone walls on the other 3 sides, but it's going to need 2 chunks of fence on the backside. So if that's what you prefer, I'll get some designs and bring it to the selectmen. And what it'll cost. And anyway, I think it would be nice if you had something that was, you know, a little fancier, but the brutal winters up there, if you had a 4-foot fence there, you probably wouldn't see it right now. And but we can do that. If that's what you'd like, we can do it.
Well, thanks, Hank. So, yeah, if you would, it sounds like if you would get, you know, a proposal for different options.
Yeah, because that's down the road, because we still got 2 rows left in that cemetery. So.
Yeah, okay.
Plus, we have other cemeteries.
Yeah, Jeanette.
Scott Kendall has a question.
Yeah, Scott.
I'd also be willing to take my mini excavator up there and move any stone wall or whatever we need to do for that graveyard. At any time, Hank, you just get a hold of me.
Great. Thanks, Scott. I want to publicly thank both you and Jed for your offer of equipment and time. That's very generous. We all know what that time is worth. So, Hank, it sounds like we have a good set of options here.
Because whatever goes there, it's got to be rugged, because the wind just goes through there crazy, and it's something. I don't think wood's are going to cut it. I don't care if you haven't seen a wood fence anywhere around here that's lasted more than 10 years. So it's got to be something that'll endure the brutality of East Hill. So,
well, sounds like we're making progress. Thank you, Hank.
If that's what they want, we can do that.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? We're back to Chris on the budget.
On the budget, any questions on the budget?
Any questions for Chris or other members of the Select Board on the budget? All right. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Hank. And again, Scott and Jed, for your offer of assistance there. That's very meaningful. Where are we? I lost track of myself here. I believe we're on...
Article 4 was the budget, Article 5 is the surplus, which Chris talked about. The board recommends splitting the surplus between
So we are discussion Article 5 at this point? All right. So Article 5 is the question of what to do with the fiscal year 2019-2020 surplus. So, Chris, for those of us who are slow at this kind of thing, direct us to that number,
Okay.
which is,
The surplus to the deficit is on page 20, at the end of the budget.
okay, so it's the very last number in
Very
that
last number.
graph.
$24,315.38.
So you're asking for, at this point, for questions about how the board has determined to spend that surplus.
Correct.
So any questions? Obviously, again, just to remind you, this is not a meeting where we can change the warning or make major revisions to the proposals, but if you have questions on how the surplus is spent, offer them here. Yeah, it looks like Jean Peters.
I just want to make a comment that in years past, we've been doing this, and I think it's been extremely successful in helping us with our capital equipment fund and our highway and bridge fund. And I think it's absolutely makes the most sense to do that. Just a comment.
Thanks, Jean. Other comments? Anyone else online? In the room?
The only other comment I would make on it is that these funds usually come from delinquent tax recovery. So it's not really money that the taxpayers have put in from the budget. It's extra money that Jeanette has managed to bring in from delinquent taxes. So it's not money the taxpayers have paid other than the ones that are delinquent.
Right. Thanks for that clarification, Chris. Any other discussion on that issue, on that piece of the agenda? There being none, move on to discuss Article 6, which is tax payment schedule. And Chris, did you give us, no, you did not propose a schedule.
It's on the ballot, John, can you go over the ballot?
Okay, yes. Here's a ballot. Okay, so we're going to,
Article 6.
is there an Article 6 on here? Maybe I need another. Sorry, folks, technical difficulties.
No, on the other.
Oh, this one.
Yeah, that's all.
Got it. Got it. Sorry. I'm a little slow here, folks. So the article is, shall the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes in 3 installments, with the due dates being August 15th, November 1st, and March 1st, by delivery to the town office postmarked on or before that date. So this will be obviously on your warning, on your ballot. You will vote basically yes or no on this on Tuesday. So are there comments or questions from anyone on that proposed vote?
And John, if you could just point out that that's the same payment schedule that you have had for many years.
So Jeanette reminds me that that's the same payment schedule that we've traditionally utilized. So there's no change being proposed here. Anyone online or in the room?
I don't see anybody on.
Okay. All right, there being none, let's move on to discuss Article 7, which again will be on the ballot on Tuesday, use of ATVs on town roads. I suspect there may be some opinions on this issue. So open it up for comments from folks online, from in the room here. Yeah, Hank, if you got to go to the mic though.
Well, this Article 7. This is, I would have brought this up. I own one of these. And there's a lot of towns in Vermont, and it's up to the town.
Right.
Because it's not state regulated, it's town regulated, that allow this.
Can I just break in, Hank? I should have done this earlier. Let me just read the article. So this is Article 7, it'll be on the
okay.
ballot. Shall the voters of Andover authorize the Andover Select Board to draft an ordinance allowing the use of ATVs on town roads? Any such ordinance would then have to be voted on by Andover's registered voters at a subsequent election. In other words, technically, to do this legally, which is what we'll do, your vote on Tuesday would be up or down. Shall the select board draft the ordinance, and then the ordinance would have to be officially certified by a vote of the town. So it would be two steps. Yes, excuse me, Hank. Go ahead.
Well, in my years hauling lumber and wood products around this state, I've seen, I've been up north and through a lot of towns that allow this. And probably one of the best examples is the town of Concord, which is Route 2, US Route 2. Goes right through the middle, goes right through the middle of town. And they allow it. And there's speed limit signs right on the road, ATVs 15 miles an hour. And so there's a town that's been doing it for a long time, and they don't have any problem with it. And a major highway goes right through their village. And I don't think it's going to bother anybody, especially in a little town like Andover. And if you ride a bicycle a lot, and you're by yourself, but in my career running up and down the road, and we've had this problem, we discussed this with the Department of Transportation about groups of bicycles on the road, which I have no problem with. But by law, they're supposed to be in single file. But a lot of times you see them 2 and 3 abreast. So now you come up on them, and you don't dare go around them because you don't know, you can't see down the road who's coming. And that's the violations, but it's rarely enforced. And that to me is a bigger hindrance than running into an occasional ATV riding on the side of the road. And I don't know what the guidelines from the state are, whether you have to be old enough to have a driver's license to do this. And of course the machine probably has to be registered. And I don't know about insurance, but those are all things that have to be looked into.
Yeah.
To put something like that on a public right of way.
Well, again, as I just explained, or my understanding of it is it's a 2-stage process. So one is basically shall the select board begin the process of looking at exactly what you're talking about, Hank.
But this goes
Is it a
on right
need?
now in this
What would
town.
it cover, et cetera? And then the second part of it would be what's actually going to be in the
Yeah.
ordinance. Maybe we could hear from a select board member who's present and not present. Thank you, Hank.
Okay.
Come back into this discussion, but let's hear. Yeah, I think we should go to the mic here. Let's hear how this this issue got on the warning.
Hi folks, my name's Chris Walker, I'm on the select board. I had several residents of the town ask me to bring this up, and that's how the article got put on here. This is a vote, whether you're interested in allowing it in town or not. If it passes, it doesn't mean we can start riding them on the roads. We have to come up with some rules and then get that approved by the voting process. So all this is, vote on it if you want to allow it. I had several residents who came to me and said, look, I want to be able to go down to my neighbor's house on my ATV and not get a ticket. So we don't have the rules in place, but like Hank said, probably registered, insured, and we don't know if we don't know anything other than that, but it would be maybe a certain cutoff on age. There are some limits, obviously. Everybody can't go ripping around town on ATVs, and that's not our intent. So you can go down to your neighbor's house on an ATV and not get pulled over and get a ticket.
Chris, would a speed limit be legal for us to have in the ordinance and be enforceable?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
I believe both of those. I'm not 100%.
Yeah.
So absolutely, there probably would be some specific regulations to it. We would have to get with the state and follow maybe some of the other towns that have already done it in our state, follow the model that they've already had success with. That's pretty much it. So if you're interested, vote yes. If you don't want it, vote no, and we can take it from there. And that's pretty much.
And thank you for the clarification, because in my introduction of the article, I actually didn't characterize it quite right.
Well,
what you're asking for is basically an ordinance that would allow the use of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jed.
So what it is just a vote on whether we should put together an ordinance for the people to look at, and then they will vote yes or no. So even if you vote yes today or on Tuesday, then we just put together an ordinance and then it gets voted on.
That's correct.
Okay.
By the townspeople. So you could vote yes Tuesday, and then 6 months down the road, when we get it all figured out, look at it and say, I don't agree with those ordinances. I don't like what's in it, and vote no. But we want input from the townspeople, whether we should devote our time to this. And if we do devote our time to this, then we would like their input on what their thoughts are. But this is just basically giving us the authority to look into it.
And for both of you, how do people get their input to you? What are the means by which they can?
It'll be during a town meeting. It will be on the minutes of, it'll be part of the agenda. And we will, let people know when it is on the agenda, and we'll welcome any input from the townspeople. And at the same time, like I said, and Chris said, and what we'll do is we'll look at other towns that already have this ordinance, and hopefully we can find a similar, somewhat boilerplate menu to go by, and we can use that to get us started. I mean, luckily, most of the work has already been done by other towns, but we can look and we can pick and choose what we think works best for this town. And then it'll be written up, and then it will be voted on by the townspeople.
Yeah. So let's, assuming that a majority of the town votes yes on Tuesday to encourage you or to allow you as a board to start looking into this, after that vote, if presuming the vote is yes, go ahead, how would citizens in the town give their feedback to you so that you folks can draft an ordinance that people feel positive about?
Well, twice a month we have a town meeting, or not a town meeting, we have a select board meeting.
Right.
And those select board meetings, it's our agenda is posted. And so when it is on the agenda and Andover Word gets it out, and at that point, anybody can come in during the commenting time for that, because it'll be on the agenda whenever we're discussing it.
And Jeanette, correct me here, but people can currently Zoom into select board meetings, and they can also call in. So I just want to make sure the voters understand the process of giving feedback to the select board. Zoom to the select board meetings, call in, come in person. So those are the ways that people can get their input to you.
John, Jean Peters has
Jean has her hand up, I think.
Actually, you've answered really all of my questions. My question was going to be, how can we, as the residents of the town, give our input on this before it goes and takes a year to go to the town meeting? Right. So would this have to be passed at the town meeting, or can you just pass it as a select board, the ordinance, after you get input from the public?
It would,
Jed or Chris, I think Jed can speak to that.
go ahead.
Yeah, what we'll do is either we'll get get everything put together, and then it'll be put to a vote. It'll either be at a special vote or it'll be at the next town meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
But we do want input from the townspeople when we're putting together. If we get direction to go pursue this during that process, we would like as much input as possible.
And just to clarify, if anybody is new to the area or whatever, when we're talking about ATVs, we're not talking about snowmobiles. That's a different category, essentially. We're talking about four-wheeled vehicles that run in the summertime, typically.
Some years year round.
Yeah. Okay.
Not this year, but just so people understand, it is like the Bass system. They're like New Hampshire. It's set up. They don't run on the Bass trails. They have their own system, their own trail system, and usually each, just like in Andover, we have a trail master who oversees and monitors things. The same thing would be set up here in this town. There would be a trail master of some sort who would oversee. And, the people are, I just happen to know in the town where I used to live, the next town over had this ordinance, and they were very good about policing themselves, because the last thing they wanted to do was to lose that privilege. And boy, if anybody got it, actually, in a lot of ways, it actually prevented a lot of people of just running around town on them, because they don't want the ones that are doing it legal don't want to be given a bad name.
Yeah, Jeanette.
Maddie has a question. And I have someone on the mic.
Yes, thanks. So I just want to make sure that everyone else knows that when the select board first discussed this idea, it was brought up that the sheriff is in town not so frequently. There has not been a great enforcement of people driving, from a trail to trail, like crossing the road, the short distance. There has been no enforcement of that. No one in Andover has ever gotten a ticket for doing that. There is no reason to create an ordinance to stop that from happening. That's giving a word to the sheriff. Hey, that's okay. An ordinance is not required for that. So what you will be asking the select board to do is putting together an ordinance that would open up our town roads to ATVs. And it's also interesting to note that since this was first brought up at a select board meeting, there has also been a discussion of a landowner who did damage to a town road with his ATVs and then did further damage trying to fix that damage. So anybody who says that damage isn't going to be done to town roads through ATVs, we've already had that experience within the last few months, within this year of Andover Select Board meetings. So I would urge you to, if you're not in favor of having ATVs on your road, to vote no.
Yeah, Jeanette, you said there was someone on an iPad.
Someone on an iPad.
Okay.
I've unmuted them. I don't know who it is.
Okay. Welcome, whoever you are. We'd love it if you identify yourself. We're not hearing you yet. Okay. Anybody else? I guess I would also say,
Oh,
yeah.
I think I finally got unmuted. This is Paul Stumpf.
Oh, hi, Paul.
I'm sorry, I don't have a camera on my computer. I just wanted to make the distinction that the town does already have a trail ordinance, and that trail ordinance does not allow motorized vehicles on town trails. So I think it'll be important to make that distinction, that if we allow motorized vehicles on town roads, that we maintain no motorized vehicles on town trails per our current ordinance.
Yeah, thanks, for that. That was a good clarification, Paul. And thanks to Maddie for your clarification about some of the legal aspects of this. And again, just stepping away from my moderator's role, even though this isn't a meeting for business and votes, I would say that just an observation, when my parents came to Andover they came in the wintertime, they came full-time in the early 60s, and a lot of you Hales and others remember those days well, and others, Plums. It was just the early days of snowmobiles, and there was no VAST, and there was no statewide club, and snowmobiles pretty much went wherever they wanted, and it was a little wild and woolly sometimes. And I think what happened was that VAST did a great job saying, okay, we want to have this opportunity to have this recreational thing that we do, and it's going to be a commercial entity for the state, so let's regulate it, let's have clubs and so on. So I would definitely suggest, I'm not telling you how I'm going to vote, but I would suggest to the select board that you get pretty nuanced about the leadership of this local club for ATVs. Jed mentioned that they would be looking at models from other towns, and I can't speak highly enough of VAST. I think that's a great model, and so something like that I think would probably make a lot of sense if this goes forward in Andover.
John?
Yeah, Jeanette. Yeah, Jill Pond has a question.
Okay, I'm just saying, I'm not sure, I would have no idea how I'm going to vote on the actual ordinance, but I do think it's always right to give people a chance to have a draft written. So I would vote for that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the select board is to be commended about the process for this. I think this is exactly right, to look into it, to put something together, to get input, and then to have a second vote. I think that's the way we want to handle this. Anybody else? Yeah, Hank.
I'd like to clarify a few things. If somebody I looked for the copy, I had it from, you down to DMV, and in the rack of all their informational magazines and stuff there, there is a booklet on that. And as the state law is now, if you can cross the town road and you can go up and down it a couple 100 feet to get on the other side, to get to where you're going on the other side, but you can't go like a quarter of a mile. I think it's 100 feet, a couple 100 feet, and it's already allowed, regardless. So I just wanted to clarify that. And as far as somebody thinking that a little ATV is ripping up town roads, I think they're disinformed, because how can just putting along, and that's all we're asking to do is to put along, and not go down there and pull donuts in the middle of a dirt road and rip things up. That's kind of a little bit of an exaggeration about ripping up town roads with an ATV. And I've got a big side-by-side, and I bought that from a fellow in town, and I got permission, and there's a way of doing it, to run underneath the power lines. I called up the Vermont ATV Sportsmen's Association, and what they do, I got a hold of the president of that company. He said that they just screen people for Velcro, and then I gave him all my information and everything, and had no problem. He said just call Velcro, and they got two offices, one in Barrie and one in Rutland. So I called the one in Rutland, and I got a hold of the lady, and but she got a computer, so I told her who I was and what I wanted to do, and I already had landowners' permission from some major landowners, most of them are your neighbors up on the hill there, to run on theirs. And she said, no problem. And I asked her if she needed any numbers, and she says, no. She said, I'm looking at your house. So she knew exactly who I was. And so it's a lot nicer when you get the blessing from the people that own the land. And so it's very possible to do. So there's a lot of places, but it'd be nice for people to be able to drive from where they live and get permission from the power lines people. You know, there's a way of doing it. And so they could drive from their home without having to trailer their machine to an access point where they could possibly run underneath the power lines.
John?
Yeah.
People stacking up.
Yeah.
First Maddie, then Paul Stumpf, and then Jen.
Okay, Matt.
So that's, I just wanted to.
Okay, thanks for that clarification.
They ought to, you know, before people run their mouths, understand what the law that stands already.
Yeah,
It's already, you know, a lot of this has already been covered.
yeah. All right, thanks for that. Maddie, then Paul, then Jed.
So I'm wondering if Mr. Mowdy was at the select board meeting where we discussed that, because he just said I exaggerated, but I didn't see him at that meeting. So it is very possible that I misunderstood what was going on at the meeting, but I think Mr. Mowdy is completely uninformed of what the discussion was at the select board meeting about a road, ATVs, and the road having to be regraded.
Thanks, Maddie. Paul? Oh, we're finding you, Paul. Yeah.
Oh, he's there.
There you go.
No, I put my hand down. I guess I left my hand up too long. I put it down.
Okay. Jed?
Hold on.
Oh, we're gonna unmute you. Hold on. Hold on.
Jen's not on. Okay.
There, we good now?
Now you're good.
All right. I just want people to know too, that the way it works in New Hampshire and the way it also works in Vermont with the towns that have already passed this ordinance, a lot of that is all governed by the game wardens. The game wardens are actually in your district. If you have roads that have been designated or a town where it's designated for ATVs, then the local game wardens are issued a four-wheeler also, which most of them already have. And they do a lot of the policing of it. It's actually, and if you have it in your town, then it actually increases through the state. It increases the presence of the game wardens because they do a lot of the policing of it because they're on call during the weekends. And I will say, you know, in New Hampshire, it's been documented, it has added over $1 billion to the local economies. What happens is it does a lot. The little hotels and motels, like the motel in the Meadow in town in Chester, I mean, those are the businesses that are thriving from it in New Hampshire. We in our town, we have Rawls Inn. I mean, it would actually generate business for them, lunches and hotel rooms. It has done a tremendous amount for the local economies and for the small businesses that were struggling in upstate New Hampshire. So that's the reason there's been a push in this state to start opening it up on the local levels.
Thanks, Jed. Dorothy Claire?
Hi,
Hi.
how are you? My question is that we have our wonderful Andover Snowmobile Club. And Jed mentioned something about a club, so I'm a little unclear about why the four-wheelers can't get together and create their own club, and which may not have anything to do with the town roads, because does the Andover Snowmobile Club have an ordinance of what they can do on town roads?
Good questions. Jed, can you speak to that?
Yes, am I on? Yes, what will happen is this town would set up just like the Bass system. There would be a trail system here. A club would be organized. There would be a club master who would, handle the daily operations, just checking of trails. And just like in Vast here, where there has been some issues this fall with people riding on fields where they shouldn't have been. I do know that the president of the Vast contacted the game warden, they tracked down the individuals, and they policed it themselves. And the game warden was very helpful in contributing to that. And it's the same thing with the VAST trail system, but it would be separate from VAST. They ride on a separate trails and everything else.
So I think, yeah, go ahead, Dottie.
Okay, I understand that it would be separate than VAST, but do we have a town ordinance that, I guess I'm just unclear about if we don't have a town ordinance for snowmobiles using town roads and we know they cross them, why do we need a town ordinance for four-wheelers if you're going to stay on a trail system?
Well, because they'll be using the town roads. And what it does is it forces people also now, if you're gonna drive on these trails or on the town roads, then you have to be registered and insured. So it actually, in a lot of ways, makes it a lot safer, because now people do drive around and their vehicles, their recreational vehicles are not registered, they're not insured. It just makes it a safer environment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dorothy. Other questions from, Maddie?
Yeah, I just want to clarify because we seem to have had a kind of a conversation drift here. So the town of Andover would not be starting an ATV club. The town of Andover would not be creating an ATV trail system. So what the ordinance would do is allow ATVs on town roads. So whatever this discussion is about trails or a club, that's not the town, that's not what we're voting on in Article 7 on Tuesday. The other thing is, to the best of my knowledge, VAST, I agree, fantastic organization. Everybody loves them. I am pretty sure they don't allow ATVs on their trails.
Correct.
Good, thanks, Maddie. That is a good clarification. I think maybe I was responsible for some of that conversation drift, or for allowing it. I think that maybe it came in because, and I'm just speculating here, which is always dangerous, but we're looking to ask the voters to give the select board specific criteria, essentially, for drafting this ordinance. And it sounded like one of the things that was proposed as a thing that would be told to the select board was, if this is done, if we allow certain roads, it wouldn't be all roads in town, I think, but certain roads to be open to ATVs, here would be a basket of recommendations, maybe requirements that local folks would need to adhere to. One of those being the creation of a local group that would have some sway over not the law enforcement end of ATVs, but would simply be sort of the vast, if you will, of the ATVing world. And I get Maddie's point, which is good, that the focus here is very narrow, and the vote, again, shall the voters authorize the Andover Select Board to draft an ordinance allowing the use of ATVs on town roads, and that's what you'll be asked to vote on Tuesday. So that's one step up or down. Then after that, depending on the way that vote goes, then there's an opportunity to give the select board specific feedback on how that ordinance would look. And I think, if I understand what Jed has said and what Chris has said, that there's quite a bit of boilerplate out there that could be applied, parts of it could be applied to the town of Andover or not. And that's up to the discretion of the board. Other comments from online? Thanks, everybody, for all your input on this. Are you seeing anybody else, Jeanette?
I am not.
Okay.
I have one question.
Yeah, Hank.
I don't know how snowmobiles got into this conversation.
I think unfortunately I brought him in, but
Okay, if anybody's familiar with Marsh Hill and Little Pond Road, do you know where the Cross Marsh Road is? Well, that's a town road. It's got a town sign on both ends. They don't plow it in the wintertime. The snowmobiles use it. The trail comes off of Marker Mountain, crosses Marsh Hill. I have no problem with this. It's excellent. And then they go down the Cross Marsh Road, and they cross Little Pond Road and continue on towards Route 11 over that way. But that's town property. How did that, and I have no problem with this, but somehow the process where the town let them use that road in the wintertime, because no need of plowing it, because you can go either way and it just connects the two roads. But it's still town property. And I have no problem with this. But that process came to being somehow, and I don't know, they've been doing it for years, so I don't know how that came into place. But that is a use of town property further than town use. Of course, the town doesn't have to plow it, so that saves the taxpayers money right there. But that is a question I'd like to, you know, if you're going to start comparing apples to oranges, how did that came into being? I don't think there was a big hoopla over that, because it makes common sense. But still, you come down, they're using town property. So, so when everybody considers this, you got to think of history. Yeah.
Yep. Thanks. Thank you, Hank. Yeah, Paul's back on.
I think I can speak to Frank's concern, to Hank's concern. At my time on the select board, I believe the Snowmobile Club comes to the town each year and asks permission to access certain parts of town roads, and select board approves that each year.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, Hank used a good phrase, which I'll take responsibility for. Apples to oranges, apples to apples. I think I may have brought in snowmobiles. It was simply a way to talk about club organization, but obviously we're talking about a very different entity. It's a very different machine. Yes, Jed is correct that there are ATVs that run year-round, but most recreational vehicle riders use snowmobiles in the winter, and very often ATVs with wheels are confined to the 3 non-snow months. So they're happening in different times, they have different impacts. So obviously, I think we, the voters, will want to give the select board lots of input on how we see this affecting our town. And we want to look at the big picture and do it in a way that doesn't create something in the future that can't be policed. Is there anybody else online? Okay. Thank you all. So it's a vote on Tuesday. Depending on that vote, we will then have a path forward. So we now are coming to the end of our scheduled meeting, and a time to just open the mic for maybe some general comments and other business. I want to actually start that just kind of briefly with bringing back to your attention a couple local organizations that are very helpful in this time, and then also talking about some of our town officers. So there are 3 organizations that I want to lift up and bring into back into your attention. First and foremost, the Andover Community Fund was established by Boo and Lorley Adalbert in the very late 1970s and has been contributed to significantly by Andover residents and their friends over the years. Jerry Williams is currently the chair of the Andover Community Fund Board. And Jerry and the board would welcome your thoughts about making those funds accessible to those who are in dire need in Andover. Generally, the board confines their assistance to the town of Andover, and these are short-term critical crisis needs. So this isn't for ongoing support, but for help in times of crisis. So I just want to lift that up. And then there are two other organizations. One is Neighborhood Connections in Londonderry. We are in Andover, part of their footprint. And they are a very effective nonprofit organization with a paid staff and volunteers, connecting folks with resources across the state and federally. And then finally, Just Neighbors is a all-volunteer organization. Andover is also part of their catchment. And Just Neighbors focuses primarily on fuel assistance, renting assistance, and a few other forms of assistance. You can contact me if you want information on Just Neighbors, and you can call Neighborhood Connections at their site in Londonderry if you have someone that you want to recommend for assistance, or you yourself need assistance. Both organizations are well worth checking out and have done extraordinary work in this time. I also just want to, we would be remiss if we didn't give a virtual standing ovation to our road crew this year. So big round of applause to them. Charlie, Josh, and Daryl have been doing an amazing job in a very challenging year. I don't think anyone would argue that this has been an easy year for road maintenance, and our roads continue to be very, very good. Second to none, I would say, in the region most of the time, with some challenging sections. Hank mentions the flats up by Maya and Jill, and the Bowdens and the Blisses, and it's always passable. So a big thank you to them. I want to really positively call out our town clerk, Jeanette Haight, and Jonathan Stevens, our able assistant. Jeanette continues to do amazing work, pivoting to this new form of town management, which is so challenging for all of us in these times. I want to give a round of applause to Jeanette. And to Jonathan. And our select board, continues to be highly influential, just as highly influential as they are highly paid. That's a joke. But to all the select board members and to those who are past select board members who've tuned in this morning, it is truly no joke to serve the town in this volunteer capacity. It's your tax dollars at work. It's your ordinances and laws. We all know how little actually can be sometimes controlled at a local level, but our select board does their best to really continue to be a voice for positive local control. So I want to give a huge round of applause to them. And finally, before I turn it back to the folks in the room for any general comments or discussion, or to anyone online, I just want to take maybe more of a somber moment to do two things. First, to recognize anyone who has passed, any of our Andover loved ones who has died in the past year. So we don't need to name their names here. We know who they are. We hold them in our hearts. I just want to ask for just a brief moment of silence for our Andover residents who passed. Thank you. And finally, from me, a huge and heartfelt thank you to all the people we all know who are stepping up into critical positions, whether they're first responders on the ambulances, rescue squads, fire trucks, law enforcement, selling and bagging groceries in the grocery stores, doctors, physicians, nurses, anyone in this time who is on the front lines. They deserve a huge and heartfelt thank you. We don't need to applaud for them, but let's continue to hold them in our hearts and in our minds, and to give gratitude whenever we can. So that ends my comments today. If we have other announcements from people in the room or online, I invite that now. Yes, Hank.
I have one question, John. What is the status of Green Up Day this year?
Good question. Hank asks what the status of Green Up Day is this year. I don't know if Deb is on the call, but generally for the last couple of years, Deb and the Peters have been major forces in Green Up Day. Do we know?
Deb Mosher's here.
Okay, Deb, if you'd like to speak, go ahead. If you don't want to, we can make something up on your behalf.
The state has planned to go ahead with Green Up Day on the usual day, which is the first Saturday in May. And my thought was that we would run it similarly to the way that we did last year, which was to pass out bags either before that day or on that day, and people can form their own groups to handle the roads the same way they did last year. Now, last year we did not have a lunch afterwards, and I'm thinking that probably won't work this year either, unless something dramatically changes. Last year we did not clean up the town grounds either, as that's more of a group activity, and I think the town took care of that, as well as the cemetery. So we did limit it to road cleanup.
I wonder, I'm just thinking out loud here, Deb, not to put you on the spot, but I wonder if the weather is seasonable on that day, if folks could consider bringing their own lunches and sitting socially distant on the town office lawns.
I suppose that's a thought. We could sit 6 feet apart and yell at each other, but yeah, that's a good idea.
Good at home.
Hey, Deb, thanks for all you do. I didn't mention you as one of our town officers, but thanks for all you do on your committee, which is crucial, Andover Project Committee. So thanks for that, and thanks for your work on Green Up Day. Yeah, I think Jean Peters is on.
Yes, I'd just like to say that Scott Kendall in his comments today kind of hit the nail on the head for me. And what he said was he's running to keep Andover, the nice small little town that it is. And I do have a concern that I'd like to bring up about what's happening in Andover and surrounding communities. And it has to do with an increase in VRBO and Airbnb homes in the area. And while I most assuredly don't want to stop someone from making a profit from their investment, I am starting to notice the subtle, sometimes not so subtle, change in the sense of communities. And I can only speak for my road, but it's very busy. Each Airbnb has a new group coming in every week. So they're coming to enjoy themselves. They're coming to party. And so it's noisy. The roads are busy. And it's starting to change what happens in my area. And I looked online, and you can see the proliferation of bubbles on the map of all of the VRBO or Airbnb properties. And with COVID, we have noticed that there have been a lot of homes purchased in Andover and in the surrounding area. And most of them purchased for over what they are valued at. So I can only make an assumption that once we are back to normal, and I pray that that happens soon, that folks will start to realize that, you know, they're a little underwater on their investment, because as it happened after 9/11, property values went up and then they went down again. So I can only imagine that a lot of these folks will start to put their homes on the market for Airbnb or VRBO. I don't, in looking at our permitted uses for an R1 district, I don't know where that fits in. And I don't know how the town benefits from having this. It's a business. These folks are not the owners are not living there. It doesn't fit under a residential, an occupation in a residence. So I just would like our town select board and zoning board to perhaps start to look at this and see whether this is a direction that we want the town to go in, whether there's any way to prevent it. I don't know that there would be any legal way, but I want to bring it up because it's something that will certainly change the nice little town feel of Andover when you have different people, 52 different families coming in for each Airbnb or VRBO residence.
Thanks, Jean. Yeah, Jeanette. Okay, Maddie and then Jed.
I just wanted to add a group to your thanks, John. I'm so glad you recognized Jeanette and Jonathan. They work so hard on town meeting and all our elections, and I'm so glad you recognized them. This year, the town had some additional help from Okemo Valley TV, and I'm just so impressed with what they've done and how they've helped us. So I really wanted to give our thanks to Okemo Valley TV, Eric, Patrick. I don't know who else was involved, but I am very grateful to them.
Sarah here. Thanks, Maddie. That is absolutely true. Eric and Sarah, thank you so much. It's been really, this has worked, I think, really well. We're all challenged, but it's working really well. Thanks for your help. Thanks, Maddie. Jed.
Yes, I would just like to thank Gene Peters for bringing that up, because that is an issue that I've wanted to address with the select board, because I can just say, like, where I live, one of the houses right near us has been Airbnb'd all the time. It's actually created, I've actually personally had to go up several times during the middle of the night to ask them to keep it down because they've been so loud. And it is, I see it. I don't, a lot of people are Airbnb in houses, and, unfortunately, there are meals and rooms taxes and everything, in the town of Andover is not seeing any revenue from any of this. So it really is something that as a board, we need to address.
Yeah, thanks, Jed. And Jean. Oh, Jean, yeah, back to you. No?
Yes, she does.
Oh, here you go. You're getting unmuted.
Okay. I just want to say that there are some towns that put a 1% tax on top of the 9% short-term rental food usage. Mostly they're the resort towns, Stowe, and those types of places. But it seems to me Andover, if Andover is going to be okay with this continuing, at the least, we should get some revenue for it. They're really, there's more use of our roads. Some of these places have 5 cars. They're going up and down. They're not just going grocery shopping.
Different states.
And they come in from all different states. We don't know if they have quarantined or not. It's unlikely. And, ask Benny's in Chester. He comes up and pulls people out of the ditch on the side of the road all the time because they don't know how to drive on the snow. So it's not just noisy, and it is noisy. It's a little dangerous as well. So thank you for listening.
Well, thank you, Jean. That's a really important issue, and I feel good that the select board has heard these concerns, and in some cases, the select board has owned them. Jed, you've spoken. Maddie, you've spoken. This is an important issue to keep our eyes on in the future. And it's a good reminder about why we want to look big picture in the town and not just, immediately in front of us to the salt and sand budgets, but what kind of town do we want this to be? Those are the questions. Anyone else? Yeah, Jennifer Probst.
Hi there. Can you? Yes. Hi. Can you hear me, John?
Yes.
I just want to. I thank Gene Peters and Jed for both speaking up. We're new. Fred and I are new to Andover. He's been coming up to Vermont his entire life, and we were over in the Weston area for a while, and we've only been here on East Hill for about 2.5 years. But something that I wanted to say last year at town meeting, and I was hoping it would get a little bit better, and it hasn't. Every day is Green Up Day when I'm brave enough to take my dogs out on the roads.
Yes.
The Vermont is crowded. Vermont is very crowded right now, which is wonderful that people can come here and enjoy. But you've probably seen me walking the bloodhounds, which I apologize to the neighbors because occasionally they do smell animals and they want to bark, but they're all lounge dogs. I don't do any hunting or anything with them. And frankly, every day is Green Up Day that I take the dogs out on the road. I pick up the iced teas and the Bud Light cans, and it's every single time I'm out there on the roads. There are tons of trash, and then frankly, a lot of speeding. We have rush hour, of course, rush hour. There's actually rush hour that I don't dare take the dogs out there on the roads. And we came to Andover because it's quieter than Weston, and we love it here. And I already know that, speeding in town is an issue. Nobody's paying attention to the speeds. And then there's just a lot of trash on the roads. And it's just, I can't believe, and this is regular trash too. So just a couple things that I'd like the select board to take notice of as we move forwards and try to make this a nice place for everybody that we can all enjoy.
Thanks for your comments, Jen. Thank you.
Next speaker, Allison Clarkson.
Allison Clarkson is getting unmuted.
Thank you. I'm Allison Clarkson. I'm one of your 3 state senators. Dick McCormick is also in the meeting. And I'd just like to address Jean's issue and Jed's about the short-term rentals. I serve as vice chair of Senate Economic Development. This has been a big issue statewide. First, we worked to collect the tax that was owed that hadn't been for years. We then last year enabled every town to enact their own ordinance about how they want to manage short-term rentals. Short-term rentals, as Jean has pointed out, and Jed, they have big impact on all sorts of things. We've from noise to sort of neighborhood disruption to reducing the number of affordable rentals we have available for Vermonters. They've really taken, particularly in towns like Hartford and Woodstock, where I live, a huge number of what might have been affordable houses in an unaffordable town and been bought by out-of-staters and now are running them as short-term rentals where families could be living with kids. So the state is looking at it. There are a bunch of bills. We want to balance needs of owners who live in homes and do a short-term rental room in their home. And it's, a way for them to supplement their income. We need to balance that with also the needs of our towns and the needs of our renters and the future of our towns and their impact. So I just want you to know that this is an issue we're really addressing both in the House and the Senate. You're going to see an effort in the Senate to have every one of them registered on the rental registry. In COVID, we needed to house people. In Irene, we needed to house people. We have no way of knowing where everybody is. It would be really helpful, both from a taxation point of view and from just what's out there, who's doing what with their properties. So I just wanted to let you know this is an issue that we're dealing with at the state level too.
Thank you, Allison, and I would certainly encourage you and Senator McCormick and others who are working on this to take a multifaceted approach, because we do need to remember that it's not just about bringing revenue into the state. It's about our Vermont residents who need housing, and the organizations that I just mentioned a few moments ago, Just Neighbors, Neighborhood Connections, and to some extent the Andover Community Fund, to some large extent, 90% of their work is focused on issues around the housing insecure, as we call it, food insecurity and housing insecurity. And people may not understand, and particularly folks who come in from out of state during COVID or for any other time may not understand how difficult it is to find housing that you can afford, either to buy or to rent in Vermont. So it's a huge issue, and I really hope that COVID and this particular issue around vacation rentals is going to be able to shine a light on it, because it's been going on for years. You know, I've lived in Andover all my life, and it's a great place to live if you inherit land or come in with money. And it can be very challenging to find a way to live in Andover if neither of those things are true. And that's just the honest, basic fact. You know, as I look around my neighbors in this room right now, I know everybody pretty well, and it's kind of, you know, you either work really hard, or you work hard and you got a gift of land that allowed you to build a house at relatively low interest and low cost. Otherwise, it's really hard to find a way to live. And we got to remember, we got to be a state and a town for everybody, not just for those with resources. So I applaud your work on this, and thank you for showing up to the meeting. Both you and Senator McCormick, we really appreciate your being here and taking the time to listen and speak. Do we have other people online?
I have Bob Francis.
Yeah, Bob Francis.
Hi. My wife and I own and operate the Chapter House, and we live in Andover. But I just wanted to say how much Airbnb actually hurts our business. We rent rooms, and we have state regulations of health inspections, insurance, fire inspections. I'd like to see those kind of regulations as to the Airbnb people. I mean, for the safety of the public, and I know that each town can do some kind of regulation, and I'll just be in favor.
Bob, we were having a little bit of difficulty understanding you, but I think I got the gist of what you were saying. It was that there are some state and local ordinances that are applied to every other business that does hospitality that don't get applied to Airbnb. So there's a fairness issue, there's a revenue issue, and there's a public safety issue. I think that those are basically your concern.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Other people online, Jeanette? Yeah, I think Jean is.
Yeah.
Got her hand up.
Am I?
You're on.
Hear me, John? Am I on mute?
Yeah, you're on. Oh, you're on.
Okay. I just want to say that in my little bit of reading that I did in reference to Airbnb and VRBO, the difference was a little startling in the fact that Airbnb collects the tax from the Airbnb owner as part of their rental, but VRBO does not. They leave it up to the homeowner who rents out their VRBO house to remit it to the state, I guess, on their own, recognizance. And if that's correct, and if you look at all the bubbles on the map, most of them are VRBO rather than Airbnb, because not everybody is as honest as we would like them to be. So that might be something that the state might want to look at.
I'm going to, again, think on my feet, which is often a dangerous thing for me to do, but to maybe suggest to the select board that they invite to a meeting or a series of meetings, either virtually or in person, some qualified experts in the whole short-term vacation rental business. So Chris, I'm suggesting that maybe that would be a good thing for you to do, because this is clearly an important issue. It's right up there with school taxes and any other issue that's going to affect life in town. So yeah, I hope that can happen. That's what I'm taking away from this, is that the select board, who are very concerned, and again, to echo Jean, are serving on the board to keep Andover wonderful and community-minded, and to make it more so, I think that they need to hear from some qualified experts, because this is obviously thick stuff and has some complexity. Do you have anybody else online?
Senator
Dick McCormick. Senator McCormick, how are you, sir?
Good, thank you. I'm going to be uncharacteristically brief. I deferred to Senator Clarkson because she is, as she said, the vice chair of the Committee of Jurisdiction on the question. But I just didn't want my quiet to be mistaken for indifference, that your Senate delegation works together, and I look to Senator Clarkson for her good counsel on this issue. And believe me, we're all aware of it. It's a bevy of problems, and we're dealing with it. That's all. I just wanted to, and thank you for letting me join your meeting briefly.
Thank you, Senator McCormick. We appreciate your attention to this. Anybody in the room or anybody else online? I think we've managed to, yeah, Chris. Calling Chris Walker up.
Thank you, everybody who came to the meeting online or in person. Seems like a lot of people may save stuff up for town meeting day. Contact us, drop us a letter, drop it at the town office, call Jeanette. We can bring it up at any time, any of these concerns. Don't be afraid of the select board. We talk about it. Don't save things up. That's what we're here for. So if you need anything, let us know. I'm available. Jeanette's at the, there. Just, she can give you our phone numbers. But reach out to us at any time. Don't wait for town meeting day. Some of these things we could have maybe addressed even today, or brought up, or had it added to the agenda. So thank you for bringing up what your concerns were, and don't be a stranger. We're all here together to make Andover better. So that's all I have.
Thanks, Chris. And in a lot of ways, I'd like to make that the last word of the meeting. We are all here to make Andover better. And all I can say to that is amen. We are a town that works together. We listen. We don't always agree. I think this meeting has been ample proof of that. But we work together through to a solution. And this is what makes us such a special place. So again, thank you to everybody in the room, to Eric and Sarah for the amazing sound and video. It actually worked. To Jeanette for riding point on this, as in so many other things. To Andrew for being an able person in support of all that we do. To the select board, who again just gives hours and hours and hours of time to our town, to our road crew, etc. We've all been through that before. Thank you so much. I don't think we need to entertain a motion to adjourn. I believe it is my privilege to simply say thank you so much for being here, and this meeting is now adjourned.